Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I'm glad you made it. Let's talk about surviving spouse benefits that could pay up to $3,582.68 in my example, or even higher. This is a tremendous benefit that I think that a lot of veterans aren't really aware of, and subsequently, the spouse is absolutely not aware of, and we need to do a better job of highlighting some of these additional benefits that we have. With that, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff. I truly appreciate it. This is a really important topic, and I think that the way that I look at this is really veterans as a whole, right? Not the majority of you, because you're watching these videos, so you get it more than most. But you have to remember, there's millions and millions of other veterans out there that have this much idea of what VA benefits are all about. Imagine it's even less than that when it comes to a spouse of one of those veterans, right? So it's a very steep hill to climb when we're talking about sharing spouse benefits. Now, with that, let's jump into it here. What I am talking about is dependency indemnity compensation. Now, the best way for me to describe it before we jump into it, I'll kind of do the fast version, then we'll jump into the qualifiers. This essentially is a benefit that acts kind of like a life insurance policy that's paid out on a monthly basis. Okay, so it's a fantastic benefit. And like I said, in the example that I'm going to give, a surviving spouse could be receiving, nearly $3,600 per month, and that's based on the here in October of 2025, there will be a COLA adjustment of 2.8% for next year, going into effect December of 2025. So there will be a bump on these numbers. But just for the sake of clarity, we will be using the October 2025 rates for this to get through how this all works. Now, there's two primary ways to qualify. There's actually more. There's more ways for a surviving spouse or dependent child or surviving parent to qualify for dependency indemnity compensation. But there's two primary ways. And these two primary ways are, one, service member, veteran dies of a service-connected condition. Now, there's already some nuance in that. Veteran dies of a service-connected condition. Really what they're saying here is that a service-connected condition played a part in the veteran's death and is listed on the death certificate. So in other words, there's two places on a death certificate. There's cause of death, and then there's contributing cause to death, okay? So you have two spots, contributing cause and cause. Now, the example would be a veteran is rated for hypertension. They die of a heart attack. The cause of death is heart attack. You want to make sure, as the surviving spouse or parent or whoever, is to work with your vital records folks in your county and get them to add hypertension, service-connected condition, hypertension as a contributing cause to death, in the event that the veteran is, has hypertension as a service-connected condition, or it would rate as a presumptive, which is another nuancy thing, right? Veteran wasn't rated for hypertension, but they served in Vietnam and they had hypertension, but they weren't rated for it, but it's a presumptive, therefore it's automatically going to be granted. That would also work. So there's a lot of nuancy, weird avenues to go with this. And on a side note, this is why you don't just trust what AI regurgitates out to you, because it doesn't understand the nuancy aspects unless you're very, very, very clear with the appropriate questions to ask it. And if you don't know the right questions, well, you're not going to get the right answers, right? So if you need help with your VA claim out there, right? This is important for veterans. If you need help with your VA claim to make sure that you get your conditions rated, so that way in the event that you die of a service-connected condition, or a service-connected condition is a contributing cause to death, that your survivors will be able to obtain DIC easier, reach out to us. Evidence-based VA claims, information's in the description and in the comments. All right, so one way is service member dies of a service-connected condition, or that service-connected condition is a contributing factor to death. That's one way. The other way is the veteran has been rated at 100%, including TDIU, for a minimum of 10 years, consecutive 10-year rating, and then passes away from anything. Doesn't matter. Doesn't need to be service-connected. You could, whatever, get hit by a bus and not service-connected in any way, and your survivors will be good with DIC. So let's jump into some of the aspects here on DIC directly from the VA site, and we will talk about that. So if you're the surviving spouse, child, or parent of a service member who died in the line of duty, or a survivor of a veteran who died from a service-related injury or illness, you may be eligible for a tax-free monetary benefit called the VA Dependency and Indemnity Compensation. Now, again, there's so much nuance, and I really, really, really hate, and look, I get it. I could be long-winded, and I can talk a lot, but I'm trying to not leave stones not looked under, if that makes sense, because there's so many little things. What I just read might have just went over some people's heads, but it said here, you may qualify for dependency indemnity compensation if you're the survivor of a veteran who died from a service-related injury or illness. True, but what if they didn't die, or you don't think they died from a service-related injury or illness? Well, now you self-segregate out and you move on with your life, when really that's not the full truth. Because, again, if the veteran's rated at 100%, and there's other qualifiers too, but this is the main one for this, veterans rated 100% for 10 years, they could die of anything. It does not need to be a service-related injury or illness. And then, on top of that, let's talk about they're not rated for anything, but they're the Vietnam vet who would qualify for a presumptive of, we'll say, hypertension, but they weren't rated, but they would qualify for it because of their Agent Orange exposure, and they died of a heart attack. Well, that's a clear connection, and I believe that would be approved by the VA. But if somebody's just reading service-related injury and you're going, well, I don't think, whoever, family member, was even connected with anything with the VA. What's a service-related injury? Oh, a service-related injury is a service-connected condition, right? That you're connected with the VA. Oh, well, they weren't connected. I guess we don't qualify. So there's so many ways to self-segregate out of these benefits. It is unbelievable. Therefore, I talk more than I probably need to, but I'm trying to hammer points home. All right, so moving on. So am I eligible for VA DIC as a surviving spouse or dependent? I'm going to go under the spouse aspect because this is the most common. But if you are a dependent child or a parent, you may also qualify for dependency indemnity compensation. So eligibility for a surviving spouse. Okay, one of these must be true. One of these must be true. There's only two. One of them must be true. You lived with the veteran or service member without a break until their death. Or if you're separated, you weren't at fault for the separation. And one of these must be true. There's three. One of these must be true. You married the veteran or service member within 15 years of their discharge from the period of service during which the qualifying illness or injury started or got worse. Sounds like a lot. So what happens is some of us have multiple periods of service, right? You re-enlist, right? And it's a new period of service. So when a condition manifests and gets added in as a service-connected condition during a period of service, that's what they're talking about there. And so they're saying that if the survivor has married the veteran or service member within 15 years of their discharge from the period of service which the qualifying illness or injury started or got worse. All right. Next one is you were married to the veteran or service member for at least 1 year. Or you had a child with the veteran or service member. I would say most commonly it's those last two. You were married at least a year, or you had a child with the veteran. Those are the two most common that we see. Note here, if you remarried, remember this is a survivor benefit, so surviving spouse. If you remarried, you can receive or continue to receive compensation if one of these describes you. You remarried on or after December 16th, 2003, and you were 57 years of age or older at the time you remarried. Or you remarried on or after January 5th, 2021, and you were 55 years of age or older at the time you remarried. All right, evidence. Let's talk about evidence here from the VA site, what they're saying. You'll need to provide evidence with your claim showing that one of these descriptions is true of the veteran or service member. Evidence may include documents like military records, doctor reports, and medical test results. Provide evidence showing that one of these is true. The service member died while on active duty for training, or inactive duty training. Or the veteran died from a service-connected illness or injury. Now remember, there's two spots on a death certificate, cause and contributing cause, and it needs to be listed somewhere. Or the veteran did not die from a service-connected injury or illness, but was eligible to receive VA compensation for a service-connected disability rated as totally disabling for a certain period of time. They don't make anything super cut and dry and easy. So you're 100% for a certain period of time. So totally disabling, totally in the words of VA, it means 100%. Okay, total. It's kind of like when you hear permanent and total. Total refers to the 100% aspect. So they're not saying permanent and total, they're just saying totally disabling. All right, so 100% for a certain period of time. Well, how long? I mentioned 10 years earlier. It's the most common that we would see is the 10-year period, but there's others. So let's dive into that. So if the veteran's eligibility was due to a rating of totally disabling, they must have had this rating for at least 10 years before their death. So 100% rated for 10 years or more. And again, there's two more bullet points here, but again, totally disabling in quotations here is simply saying 100%, and it means the veteran's injuries made it impossible for them to work, which would include TDIU. All right. Now, since their release from active duty and for the last 5 years immediately before their death. All right. So this is the other time period. Okay. So we already know the 10-year piece. Rated 100%, 10 years goes by, bam, you can pass away from anything, you're good to go. The shorter time frame, the 5-year time frame, is if you are rated 100% from the release of active duty and for at least 5 years immediately before their death. So you got out, you got rated, it backdated you to the day of your discharge, the day after your discharge, 100%, and now 5 years and 2 months later you pass away. You could pass away from anything, and you should be good to go for your spouse. All right, next one. You must be rated 100% for at least 1 year before your death if the veteran was a former prisoner of war who died after September 30th, 1999. All right. So, again, what do you get? You get tax-free monetary benefits, and the amount that you receive is going to depend on a bunch of different factors. And I am going to give you the example now on the dollar figures here and give you some information on the table on add-ons to your monthly amount. So, again, this is based on the standard rates as of October of 2025. There is a COLA that has been announced of 2.8%, which would be added to this and effective December 1st, 2025. So these numbers will be changing, but as of now, this is what they are. Your base rate for dependency and indemnity compensation, if you qualify for it, this is the base amount, and then there's add-ons on top of this. So the base rate is $1,653.07. Now, there's add-ons. Let's talk about these add-ons. There's the 8-year provision. Now, if the veteran had a VA disability rating of totally disabling, again, 100%, for at least 8 years, 8 full years leading up to their death, and the surviving spouse was married to the veteran for those same 8 years, then there's the 8-year provision. So there's 2 things that have to be 8s, right? Veteran had to be rated 100% for 8 years, and the surviving spouse must have been married to that veteran for those same 8 years. If so, there's an add-on of $351.02. Next one is aid in attendance. You may qualify as a surviving spouse for aid in attendance if you have a disability and need help with regular daily activities like eating, bathing, dressing, so forth. That would be $409.53 added to the base amount. Maybe you qualify for housebound allowance. If you can't leave your house due to a disability, you may qualify for housebound allowance, which is $191.85. Now let's talk about dependents. If you have 1 or more children who are under 18, there's a transitional benefit. So the VA recognizes the difficulty of losing a parent for a child under the age of 18, and they give a 2-year add-on for that transitional benefit of $350 per month for the first 2 years after the veteran's death. Now there's also the bump for the eligible children, right? So dependent children under the age of 18, simply having the dependent children will also warrant a bump. That bump is $409.53 for each eligible child based on age, right? So the example here would be if you're the surviving spouse of a veteran, your monthly rate would start at that $1,653.07. Then for each additional benefit you qualify for, those add-ons, the VA would add these amounts from that table that I just read. In this example, we'll show the total monthly payment for someone with 2 children under the age of 18 who qualifies for the 8-year provision. They were married to the veteran for the same 8 years that the veteran was 100% rated, and the surviving spouse qualifies for aid in attendance. All right, so the total monthly payment for the first 2 years, because of that transitional benefit for the children, right? The first 2 years, there's an additional bump. So for the first 2 years, they'd be looking at $1,653.07, the base rate, plus $409.53 for the first child, another $409.53 for the second child, $351.02 for the 8-year provision, $409.53 for aid in attendance, and then $350 for that transitional benefit for the first 2 years after the veteran's death. All right, so that total comes to $3,582.68 per month. Now, again, it's going to be for the first 2 years after the veteran's death. Then that $350 for the transitional benefit would then be subtracted. So $3,582.68 less the $350 per month leaves you with $3,232.68 per month while the eligible children are still eligible, right? Once they become of age and they move on, those dependent children would then be removed from the total amount and reduce down that monthly benefit from that point. So with that, I'll go ahead and conclude it there. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you very much. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.